For 20 years, Gunsmoke ruled American television. Guns blazing, heroes standing tall, and Dodge City shining like the perfect frontier. But behind those saloons hid explosions, secret affairs, near-fatal accidents, and a network terrified the truth would destroy its biggest show. Now, after decades of silence, those buried secrets are finally coming out. They're wilder than anything that ever made it to air. Fact 1. The day Dodge City nearly lost its hero. It was supposed to be a simple fire scene. A wooden shack, a few flames, smoke curling for effect, just another day on the Gunsmoke set. But in a heartbeat, everything turned into a nightmare. The shack exploded like a bomb. Splinters flew like arrows. Lights crashed to the ground. Props went flying in every direction, and chaos swallowed the set. James Arnes, the towering figure of Marshal Matt Dillon, was only steps away. The shockwave tore his cowboy hat from his head. For a moment, everyone thought he was dead. Crew members screamed, some catching fire, others collapsing from shock. Thick smoke turned reality into a blur. The line between acting and death vanished. The aftermath was equally terrifying. Production stopped. Safety rules were rewritten. Yet even after the blast, the set seemed haunted. Phantom gunshots echoed in empty halls. Shadows glided through the Long Branch saloon. Rumors whispered that Civil War ghosts lingered on the land. Some crew refused to work overnight. The real horror wasn't just the explosion. It was Arnes himself. That day, fate nearly claimed the man behind the law of Dodge City. Fact 2. A prop gunshot nearly turned into real tragedy. They say props are safe. On Gunsmoke, that rule almost failed spectacularly. During a routine quick-draw rehearsal, Ken Curtis aimed a blank-loaded revolver, but the flash shot straight into a nearby technician's face. Flames licked his skin. Eardrums burst. Pain and chaos filled the air. The entire set froze. It was a moment so terrifying that everyone realized how close they had been to turning fiction into real death. The aftermath was tense and immediate. The crew implemented strict double inspections on every weapon from that day forward. Not a single gun was allowed on set without meticulous checking. For a show known for gunfights and shootouts, this incident was a brutal reminder that the smallest mistake could have ended a life. The drama didn't just stop at the accident. The crew's morale shifted overnight. Every scene involving a gun carried a shadow of fear. Even James Arnes, towering as Marshal Dillon, had to balance his commanding presence with the unspoken tension of knowing death could literally come from a prop. It changed how the show operated behind the scenes. Fact 3. Burt Reynolds. Quit Gunsmoke at his peak. Burt Reynolds had just begun to shine. Playing Quint Asper, a half-Comanche blacksmith with fire and grit, Reynolds was instantly beloved by audiences. His character brought a fresh energy to Dodge City, standing out among the seasoned veterans of the cast. But then, at the height of fame, Reynolds made a shocking decision. He quit. Can you guess the reason? Fear of being trapped forever in one image. Staying on Gunsmoke meant becoming the blacksmith, a role audiences adored, but it would also become a cage. Colleagues were stunned. Reynolds gambled everything, leaving behind security, recognition, and steady work. Yet the risk paid off. Within a few years, he exploded onto the big screen with Deliverance, then soared to superstardom with Smokey and the Bandit. His time on Gunsmoke had taught him discipline, honed his craft, and prepared him for life beyond Dodge City. Fact 4. Dodge City almost sued Gunsmoke. You won't believe this. Dodge City, the real Dodge City, actually considered suing CBS over Gunsmoke. The residents were furious. They saw their town turned into a non-stop shooting gallery full of drunkards, brawls, and chaos. Local newspapers slammed the show, calling it a lie that tarnished the city's reputation. Officials even talked about legal action to defend their honor. Can you imagine? A show meant for entertainment nearly ended up in court because it offended the people who lived in its fictional streets. Every saloon, every gunfight, every dusty showdown that we love so much was a nightmare for the locals. They didn't want their hometown trapped in a Hollywood stereotype, and they were ready to fight back. But here's the twist. The same show that almost got sued ended up saving them. Curious fans started showing up in droves. Hotels, restaurants, and souvenir shops popped up overnight. The Long Branch Saloon got rebuilt as a tourist attraction. Dodge City went from anger to opportunity, turning outrage into a booming economy. Fact 5. Doc and Chester hated each other off-screen. Here's one you'll never guess from watching the show. Doc and Chester were like fire and gasoline off-camera. Milburn Stone, playing Doc, followed every line perfectly. Dennis Weaver, Chester, improvised constantly, adding gestures, slipping in jokes. Stone hated it. Every time Chester strayed from the script, Stone's glare could stop your heart. It got so tense that writers actually started cutting scenes that had both characters together just to avoid conflicts. On screen, they made pure comedy. Yet, every sarcastic remark Chester did was layered with real tension. The conflict pushed both actors to their limits. They had to perform flawlessly while navigating real anger, frustration, and subtle sabotage. The show made it look effortless. That's what makes this fact shocking. Fact 6. Gilligan's Island was sacrificed to save Gunsmoke. Here's a Hollywood secret that blows your mind. Gilligan's Island got canceled so Gunsmoke could live. CBS needed space for Dodge City, and the network president, a massive Gunsmoke fan, pulled a last-minute shuffle. After that, Gunsmoke got 8 more years. Ratings climbed. The show's fans cheered, oblivious to the cost. Behind the scenes, the crew and cast were shocked by the brutal reality of TV survival. One show's disappearance literally saved another. However, Gilligan's Island wasn't failing. It had a loyal audience. But executives chose Dodge City over the castaways, and suddenly, a beloved series was wiped off the map. For years, the story stayed secret. Fans didn't know that the show they loved survived because another fan favorite was erased. Fact 7. The only kiss between Arnie's and Blake happened in a cigarette commercial. You'd think after 20 years, Marshal Matt Dillon and Miss Kitty would have shared countless kisses on screen, right? Wrong. Not a single on-screen kiss existed between James Arnes and Amanda Blake in the entire series. Instead, their one and only kiss happened in a cigarette commercial. Yes, you heard that correctly. It was for L&M cigarettes. In the short clip, Blake walks up to Arnie's, hands him a pack, and plants a quick kiss on his cheek. Arnie's turns to the camera, flashes a charming smile, and quips, "That's the way I like to get my smoke." That fleeting moment, completely outside the narrative of Dodge City, became legendary. Fans were stunned, delighted, and bitter all at once. They had obsessed over the slow-burning romance, imagining what could have been. Then this commercial revealed it all had never existed in the show itself. For 20 years, Dodge City fans were teased, manipulated, and starved for intimacy. And the only reward came not in the story, but in a cigarette ad. That's insane, right? Fact 8. Miss Kitty's voice was a fortune and a prison. Amanda Blake's voice wasn't just iconic, it was insured. Lloyd's of London stepped in, protecting the husky, magnetic tone that made Miss Kitty unforgettable. Lose that voice, and the soul of Gunsmoke would have evaporated. But there was a catch. She wasn't allowed to smoke in real life, even though Kitty constantly did on screen. Not only that, there is one more thing that will surprise you. After nearly 20 years, Blake demanded new costumes to preserve the dignity of Miss Kitty. Producers refused. They labeled her troublesome and struck her from the show without recognition or farewell. She had carried Dodge City on her shoulders, anchored the saloon, given life to every interaction, and yet they discarded her over worn dresses. The drama is staggering. Even years later, the producers admitted they had destroyed the feminine soul of Gunsmoke. But no matter how honest, things that have been thrown away can never be returned to their original state. Fact 9. Chester's limp that tortured a man. Chester's limp wasn't a quirk. It was a punishment. Dennis Weaver invented the gait to give the sidekick authenticity, but it became a nightmare. Day after day, he forced his body into an awkward, spine-straining position. Every step a pain. By the end of the day, his muscles screamed, his back ached, yet he kept going. 9 years of this torture left permanent marks. When Weaver finally left Gunsmoke, he had to relearn how to walk normally. The audience never knew. Behind the scenes, it was agony. The man who made Dodge City laugh carried years of invisible torment. Fact 10. The drunkard on screen was a real criminal in life. You think Louise's staggering, slurred antics were just good acting? Think again. The actor behind Dodge City's most infamous drunkard, James Noosa, had lived a life that made the role terrifyingly authentic. Before Gunsmoke, Noosa was homeless, moving between street survival and jail cells, stealing to survive and constantly battling the shadows of society. Every line, every haggard expression, every weariness in his voice wasn't crafted. It was lived. When he walked on set, writers noticed immediately that the authenticity was electrifying. Louise became a tragic, chilling reminder of human suffering. Audiences laughed, but they also felt the discomfort of someone who had been to the edge of society's abyss. The way he embodied Louise blurred the lines between fiction and reality. And for Noosa, Gunsmoke was redemption. He later admitted that stepping into Louise's boots saved his life, giving him purpose, and a place where the world saw him as talented instead of discarded. Fact 11. Arness's cowboy hat had its own bodyguard. No one outside the set knew just how seriously James Arness's cowboy hat was treated. This wasn't just a piece of costume, it was a sacred relic. Every time Dylan stepped into the saloon, that hat symbolized law, authority, and Dodge City itself. The crew made sure it stayed that way. It had its own insurance policy. It was locked in a steel case when not in use. A staff member's sole job was to guard it, ensuring nothing happened to the one thing that visually completed Marshal Dillon. For risky scenes, replicas were used, but only the original hat could appear in the key shots. One scratch, one misshape, and the character's iconic image could have been compromised forever. Crew members argued, joked, and sometimes even competed over who got to handle it, knowing how fragile its status was. Arness himself teased, "If I've got a bodyguard, then this hat has one too." Fact 12. The superfan who sent a 30-kilo Gunsmoke Bible. People loved Gunsmoke, but one fan took obsession to a whole new level. In Iowa, a woman spent an entire year creating what she called the Gunsmoke Bible. Over 400 pages meticulously compiled, it contained photos, newspaper clippings, episode notes, and even a hand-built wooden model of Dodge City. When it arrived at the studio, the crate weighed more than 30 kilograms, so heavy the crew struggled just to move it. The dedication was staggering. Each page was carefully arranged, each detail checked and rechecked. She wasn't just showing fandom. She was creating a shrine to every shootout, saloon scene, and behind-the-scenes moment she could capture. It was a tangible love letter to the series. When James Arness received the Bible, he was genuinely moved. He personally invited the fan to the set, giving her a tour and treating her as Gunsmoke's #1 supporter. That gesture reflected how much the show valued its audience, but also how surreal it was. A single fan's devotion had tangible influence on the set, turning admiration into real-life interaction. Fact 13. Gunsmoke was canceled without warning after 20 years. After 20 years dominating television, no one expected it to end like this. One day, the cast arrived on set, ready for another shoot, only to learn CBS had pulled the plug. There was no farewell episode, no emotional goodbye in Dodge City. For actors who had lived with these characters for decades, it was a gut punch. The abrupt cancellation wasn't just shocking, it was ruthless. James Arnes and the crew had planned scenes, arcs, even imagined futures for their characters, only to have them erased overnight. Behind the scenes, tension and disbelief ran deep. Actors and crew struggled to process that their work, their routines, their lives entwined with this set could end without warning. Reunions in the late 80s and 90s gave fans a chance to revisit the city, but nothing could replace the shock of the original, sudden cancellation. Fact 14. Doc finally got a first name. For 16 years, he was just Doc. Everyone in Dodge City relied on him. He patched up Dylan, healed gunshot wounds, and delivered dry, witty comebacks that kept the saloon lively. But here's the crazy part. Not a single person knew his first name. Fans assumed Doc was all there ever was, a mysterious fixture of the town. Behind the scenes, Milburn Stone had been playing this iconic character with no personal identity beyond the title. That's insane, right? Finally, in season 16, Stone was allowed to give his character a name. Galen Adams. Fact 15. James Arnes appeared in every single episode. This is insane. James Arnes, as Marshal Matt Dillon, appeared in every single episode of Gunsmoke, 635 in total, over 20 years. That's a record almost no one else could dream of. While other actors came and went, Dillon was constant, the backbone of Dodge City. What's shocking is the commitment behind that. Arnes wasn't a machine. He was human, with war injuries, chronic pain, and later, arthritis that made every long day on horseback agony. Producers even offered him breaks, but he refused. He showed up for every single shoot. It's almost impossible to picture Gunsmoke without Dillon, because Arnes made sure you couldn't. That kind of endurance is more than acting. It's obsession, responsibility, and loyalty all rolled into one towering presence. After hearing all this, which of these hidden secrets shocked you the most? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every one of them. And if you want more wild, behind-the-scenes truths from Hollywood's golden age, make sure to hit like, subscribe, and turn on that bell. Because trust me, the next story is even crazier.